कृष्ण प्रस्थाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी इति नामिने नमस्ते सरस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेषा शून्यवादी वशत्य देशतारिणे जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंदा श्री अद्वैता गदाधरा श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंदा जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंदा श्री अद्वैता गदाधरा श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंदा हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम राम हरे 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 कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे जय राधा गोपीनाथ श्री राधे जय जगन्नाथ जय बलदेवा जय सुभद्रा माई जय सुदर्शन जय गिरि गोवर्धन जय गिरि गोवर्धन गिरि गोवर्धन जय गिरि गोवर्धन जय गौरानिताय जय गौरानिताय गौरानिताय जय गौरानिताय जय प्रभुपाद प्रभुपाद जय जय प्रभुपाद जय जय गुरुदेव गुरुदेव जय जय गुरुदेव नित्य गौर हरि बोल नित्य गौर हरि बोल। जय ग्रंथराज श्रीमद् भागवतम की जय, श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय, श्रील गुरुदेव की जय, गौर प्रेमानंदे। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय, ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Narayanam Namaskrityam Naranjaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudiraye Nashtaprayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloker Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki Mukham Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langayate Girim Yatkrapatamaham Vande Shri Gurum Dinadarinam Paramananda Madhavam Shri Chaitanya Ishwaram Hari Om Tat Sat. So we are continuing chapter 13, which is titled Dhritarashtra Quits Home. So basically, the flow is that is, we are, the question asked about how Parikshit was born, what were his activities, how he became the king, and, all those questions were asked. So as a background information, Sutta Goswami is explaining how, Parikshit was, saved in the womb of Uttara, then how he grew up under the care of the Pandavas, and now he is explaining the first generation how Dhritarashtra quit home. Then he'll set up the future where Krishna leaves, and then the Pandavas leave, and then all these are setting the scene for Parikshit to become the king. And once he becomes a king, what were his activities, and then finally how he surrendered to Sukadeva Goswami. So that's the whole summary of the first canto. So today we are hearing about how Dhritarashtra, so these are older generations, one generation older, so how he was still living with the Pandavas even after doing so many bad things to them. Dhritarashtra was still living with them. So Vidura, who was a Mahatma who had gone away before the war, and after all these things happened, after Krishna left, he came back just to advise the Pandavas, or particularly he came to advise the old king, Dhritarashtra, so that he's still attached and living like an animal. So he comes and he chastises, in the previous few verses, starting from verse 18. We have finished until 23 and 24. Sorry, we have finished until 24. So we have to continue from 25. From 18 to 24, he talked about how death cannot be counteracted, and the time of power, power of time is so much that everybody has to surrender. And he also pointed out all your friends, relatives, fathers, sons, everybody have died, all your relatives have died, and your body also has become old, useless, mucus is coming, your eyes are not working, ears are not working, everything is not working. But even at this stage, you are living like a dog with the food thrown away by Bhima, right? So he's just trying to instill that Kshatriya spirit in him, to say that what kind of person you are, that you don't have any shame or any honor, and you are so attached to your body. So Vidura is straight to the point, and he knows at this age, because Dhritarashtra is at such a age where all these nice slow preaching will not work. He's at a point in life where somebody has to push him. Already he is very materialistic. In addition, he has done so many offenses to the devotees, so he's in a very critical situation. Still Vidura is thinking of good for him. So now we'll go to verse 25. Despite your unwillingness to die and your desire to live even at the cost of honor and prestige, your miserly body will certainly dwindle and deteriorate like an old garment. So, basically here he is calling him a Kripana. Kripana means miser. That's the exact, So Prabhupada in the purport talks about Kripana and a Brahmana. He talks how Kripana is, miserly man, who doesn't really understand his body, whereas a Brahmana knows the to what level the body is there. He understands that body is temporary, there's a beginning, there's an end, and he doesn't forgive. um you know uh, uh, you know Whereas we see here, Dhritarashtra is understood, addressed as Kripana, because he doesn't understand, that the body has a shelf life, and it is given for a particular purpose. And without knowing that, he just wants to extend his life at any cost, and then the lifetime is going to end. The body's warranty period is over. No more warranty. It is it's a time where you have to throw it like a old garment, and still Dhritarashtra somehow or other wants to extend his life as much as possible. We see this in modern life. People are so attached to body, that at any cost, they want to extend and hold on to life, without thinking how much ever effort they put. It may be like going to the hospital a month, a few months, few years they may extend, but at the end of the day, the body is useless. It is, at some beyond a point, it becomes completely useless and it has to be thrown away. This is one who doesn't understand this is a miser, right? Not one, this is the true meaning of the word miser. So this is a very sad situation in Kali Yuga. Most of us, we are so attached. Some or other, we want to extend our life. Whereas we see, Srila Prabhupada, right? If you see the life of Srila Prabhupada, at the end, they were saying, you go to the doctor, you can go to the hospital, but then Srila Prabhupada was very clear. He said, I don't want to die in a hospital, right? He was very clear, in his, about his ideas of, he said, okay, the body's end is going to come, and I have used it. Now I'll use the body. Even dying, I'll use my body as an example for other devotees. So that's how a Brahmana or a higher devotee should behave. Uh, you know, Text 26. He is called undisturbed, who goes to an unknown remote place and freed from all obligation, quits his material body when it has become useless. So this is what, when you understand the shelf life is going to end, there are, you have to cut the losses. Like, for example, if somebody runs a business, they're selling a product, and then let's say, the shelf life of a particular product is about to come. You would see they'll put it in an offer, or even they will be ready to sell it, at a loss also, whatever I can get, because beyond that, you buy it for 100 rupees and you want to sell it for 150 rupees, and the shelf life is about to end. You'll be ready to sell it for not for 150. You'll reduce it to 110, 105. There are people who will even reduce it for 90, 80, 70, as long as, they get something out of it. So here, Vidura is applying the same concept that, next verse he'll talk about the topmost, but he knows that Dhritarashtra can go to that level. So he's talking about at least become a dhira, right? Become a person, one who is not undisturbed, right? A steady person. Dhiras tatra na muhyati. We see that in Bhagavad Gita as well. One who knows the body keeps on changing, and at the end it has to be thrown away, and at the time of death, another body is received. He is called a dhira. So here Vidura is saying, okay, you can't become a devotee. At least, understand that this body is not all in all. There is something beyond the soul, and try to concentrate on the soul. So at least become a dhira, and so he says, cut all these attachments, including your attachment to your body, and to your life, prolonging your life. Give up all kind of obligations, quit your material body, because anyway it has become useless. Most of it is not working for you. So he says, it is very important that when we have the body, when it is useful, we use it in the service of the Lord. Srila Prabhupada very beautifully writes in the purport that he quotes Narottam Dasa, where he says, if we are not using the body in the devotional service of the Lord, we are knowingly drinking poison, right? So that means we are spoiling our life. Okay, so at least basic idea should be very clear that the life is meant for self-realization, not for anything else. This basic idea has to be very clear in the mind. Beyond a point, and as we progress in our life, as we become older and older, our attachment should be reducing. But particularly now that we have all in the path of devotional service, aspiring to become a pure devotee, we should keep reducing our material needs. We should be minimizing our needs, and as much as possible try to keep cutting the attachments. There's no point in calling ourselves a devotee and behaving like a normal outsider, right? So we should be very clear as we reach the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, as we grow in age, we should keep changing our priorities, more towards spirituality and less towards material. At least that's a minimum, right? Given that most of us are grahasthas who are practicing from home, right? Like, there may be few devotees who have given fully to the service of the Lord, and that is glorious. But given that we can't do, as a devotee, we should be very conscious that we don't get over attached. We should at least be dhira, right? We should, as we grow older, as the body becomes more and more useless, we should become more and more detached. Text 27. He is certainly a first-class man who awakens and understands either by himself or from others the falsity and the miserly of this material world, and thus leaves home and depends fully on the personality of Godhead residing within his heart. So now he is talking about Naro Uttama, right? Topmost of all the human beings. Right, one who leaves home and develops indifference to material attachment either by himself or through the help of others. Either on his own he should have intelligence, or at least by hearing from devotees he should give up these attachment. So that would be our purpose as we listen to the classes, as we chant more and we advance. This point is very important. Are we becoming indifferent? Have we become understood that this material world has no value? Right? Have we understood that, or are we giving more and more importance? Right? Sometimes we get caught in the idea that I am a devotee, and that sits in the mind, and we actually sometimes we ignore the basic idea that we have not even given up our attachments in life. Right? Even in devotional service, when we come to the temple, our mood is not proper. Why? Because of all these attachments, which is leading to the anarthas, right? Oh, I want to be very famous, even among devotees. Is everybody praising me? If you're behind name and fame, what is the point? If as you advance in devotional service, are you getting detached? What is the purpose of devotional service? We have given up so many things to come to devotional service. And after coming here, if we are going to run behind these same things again and again, then we are again a kripana. Right? So we should be very careful. Devotional service means we have to be very careful. We have to be not careful of others. We have to be careful of our own self, our own mind. That is the only problem when we come to devotional service. Nobody else can stop our devotional service. The only thing is our own mind, our own intelligence is the problem, and our own attachments. So when we hear these verses, we should, am I becoming more and more, at least walking towards the first class man? Right? Am I trying, when I do service, what is my mood? Right? Am I doing it really as a service, as as it is intended, or am I doing with ulterior motives in my mind? So we should keep chastising. I'm not saying that naturally we will be very pure on day one, but when these thoughts come, we should, chastise our own mind, saying, no, that's Kripana's thinking. I want to become a Narottama as suggested by Vidura. So this is very important. And Srila Prabhupada, in the purport, he talks about dhira, right? And then, that's one class of transcendent. And then one who is not disturbed by, disturbed by being away from family association. Second one is a sannyasi, who is renounced. And the third one is a sincere devotee of the Lord. And then he talks about how devotee is the topmost of all. And he says Vidura is such a topmost devotee, and we should try to follow his footsteps. Text 28. Please therefore leave for north immediately, without letting your relatives know, for soon that time will approach which will diminish the good qualities of men. So, Vidura already knew that Kali Yuga is coming. So he's saying leave for north. So he's saying go to Himalayas, do a meditation, go to the forest. Meaning, give up all these material comforts, for which you're so attached, So Prabhupada summarizes Vidura's instructions to Dhritarashtra in this purport, in text 28's purport. He says to become Narottama, or a first-class devotee, one should depend completely on Krishna and, not on any ordinary man. Right? So Prabhupada also gives an quotes from Bhagavad Gita that Krishna will even, for a most sinful person, Krishna will remove all the effects of sinful activities. He promises in 7.28, right? So Prabhupada quotes that verse, and he says that even sinful people can depend on the Supreme Personality of Godhead, And so Dhritarashtra, even though he had done so many sinful things, as advised by Vidura, at least become a Dhira in the beginning if it is not impossible to become a sannyasi or a Narottama like Vidura. So, Prabhupada says, persistently endeavoring on the line of self-realization help a person to the rise to the conditions of a Narottama from the stage of Dhira. From at least from becoming a Dhira, slowly he can try to become from Dhira, then sannyasi, then Narottama. That is the three stages Srila Prabhupada has explained in the previous verse. So here, Vidura is pushing at least you become a Dhira. And that's what Prabhupada is also summarizing in the purport. So, Kali Yuga is going to come. It's full of all nonsense, television, videos, computers, corruption, pollution, polluted water, food, violence, everything we see, pandemic, all of this is going to come. So he's, advising Dhritarashtra to act quickly, because the fate of the whole world is going to change when Kali Yuga comes in. So now he has given such a good advice from text 29 to 37. We'll see how Dhritarashtra, he left, after he cuts this attachment and he leaves. And as he leaves, Gandhari also being a chaste wife, we saw how chaste wife she was. So we see that in the next few verses, she follows Dhritarashtra as well. And then after giving that advice to Dhritarashtra, Vidura also leaves because he has no attachment to family life. He doesn't want to be, pampered or materially pampered. So that's what we are going to see in the next 7 to 8 verses. Text 29. Thus Maharaj Dhritarashtra, the scion of the family of Ajamida, firmly convinced by introspective knowledge, Prajna, broke at once the strong network of familial affection by his resolute determination. Thus he immediately left home to set out on the path of liberation as directed by his younger brother Vidura. So Srila Prabhupada actually here, it's a wonderful purport. I request all of you to read this purport because it's very heart touching. Srila Prabhupada talks about how by association of pure devotees, moments association of pure devotees, we can achieve perfection. And Srila Prabhupada gives his own example. He says, if we are not favored, Prabhupada says, if he was not favored by Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he said it was only few minutes. He says he got his association only for few minutes, but that few minutes changed his whole life. He said, probably I would have become a big business magnate, but I would never path of Krishna consciousness without that few minutes association of my spiritual master. So Srila Prabhupada compares himself to Dhritarashtra and his spiritual master to Vidura. Such a heart-rendering, humble, realization. Srila Prabhupada's connection with his spiritual master, you can read it in these words. So that again, the next point is we should, if a pure devotee like Vidura can, can push and make a person like Dhritarashtra, who is sinful, offensive, to advance in spiritual life, then how much more benefit we can get if we avoid offenses and associate with such devotees. Again, it's all practical abhideya. The jnana is there. Then what is the process? Abhideya is very important, right? Just with sambandha jnana, just by having knowledge, it is of no use. It has to be put into practice. So we need to see how much association we are taking with devotees, right? How much we associate with our spiritual masters, the senior devotees, how much we hear Krishna Katha, how much we are engaged in the service. All of this we need to consider, right? I said, we can't just say, oh, I'm attending Bhagavad, I'm I wear and go to temple. Yeah, they are all good, there's no doubt about it, but it doesn't end there. It's very important to apply on a day-to-day basis. Text 30. The gentle and chaste Gandhari, who was the daughter of King Subala of Kandahar, or Gandhara, followed her husband, seeing that he was going to the Himalaya mountains, which are the delight of those who have accepted the staff of the renounced order, like fighters who have accepted a good lashing from the enemy. So, now Prabhupada explains in the purport that now Gandhari, because the advice was given by Vidura to Dhritarashtra, right? In a sense, if you see, Gandhari has already achieved perfection by being so chaste and following her husband perfectly. She has done her Varnashrama duty perfectly. So by nature, she has already achieved perfection. She is, she has already achieved the level of detachment, because even though she knew her husband is bad, still she served him so faithfully. That itself is a sign of detachment, right? And by doing that, she has already, in a sense, she has already achieved perfection, right? So she doesn't have to actually go and do tapasya, but still, being such a chaste lady, she is still following. Because you see here, the instruction was given by Vidura to Dhritarashtra, and Dhritarashtra in his heart, in the previous we given up all attachment. So when he was ready to leave to go to Himalayas, he was not even asking Gandhari to follow her, but still, she being such a chaste wife, she was following Dhritarashtra, right? So the chastity itself has already given, that is her tapasya. She has already done tapasya in her life for being chaste. For a woman, chastity is considered the highest tapasya, right? There is a story in Mahabharata which shows the power of women's chastity. So there is this rishi, Gautama, his name was Gautama. So one day he was sitting under a tree and he was meditating for a long time. And, a bird was sitting on the top of the tree, and the bird, dropped some nonsense on him. And when it fell on him, his, tapasya got disturbed. So he woke up and he became very upset. And then he looked at the bird angrily. And because he had such great tapasya power, as soon as he saw the bird angrily, it burnt away and it died. So he thought, okay, anyway, my tapasya is disturbed. Let me go and beg for some food, alms, because sannyasi should never cook or save money or do anything. He goes to 7 houses and he waits until the time it takes to milk a cow. We know how much time sannyasi should beg, because we saw that about Sukadeva Goswami in second chapter particularly. So he goes and the house, he goes to a house of a brahmana. And then the brahmani, the house wife, she comes out and she sees, oh, sannyasi has come. So she said, she worships him and says, can you please wait, I'll go and bring food for you. So the rishi says, okay, I'll wait. So the wife goes inside to get some food for the sannyasi, and that at that time exactly the brahmana comes. And then as soon as the brahmana comes, the wife serves her husband first. She washes her feet, and he asks him to rest and serve him food and everything. Now the sannyasi is waiting outside, the rishi is waiting outside, but the wife is taking care of her husband. And then the rishi becomes very angry. He waits and waits and waits, and still, after serving her husband, and after she has taken care of her husband very nicely, she takes the food and brings it for the rishi. Now the rishi is so angry. How dare this lady, make me this? I am a rishi. I am of great power. And she looks at her angrily. Nothing happens. And then the wife, she gives the food, and then she says, don't think that I'm like the bird in the tree whom you can burn away. And the rishi is amazed, completely amazed. First, my anger didn't work on her. She had no power. And not only that, how did she know that outside the city, when I was doing tapasya in the forest, that I burnt a bird with my anger? How did she know this? And then she understands that she is not an ordinary person. So he surrenders, and because that's Vedic culture. Again, Vedic culture means once you understand somebody is superior to you in devotional service, you immediately surrender and accept instructions from that person. That is association. So immediately, even rishi, he says, please, I don't know, forgive me. How did you know all these things, and how are you so such have the power of such a great tapaswini? And then she says, see, I follow my dharma perfectly. as a wife, I am chaste, very chaste, and serving my husband, because he is for me, he is God, and I serve him perfectly as I serve my God, serve a God. So that's how I've been serving him. So through that chastity, I have attained this power. And then he says, okay, can you please give me instructions? Or he says, no, no, no. You go to this town in Bihar, Mithila, sorry, not in Bihar. She says, go to Mithila. There is a butcher there. You go and ask him, he will answer your questions. And then he goes and, there's a big discussion between the Rishi and the butcher. And then the butcher gives jnana to the Rishi, right? So the point here is that is just by being tapasvini, the tapasya for a woman is chastity. And Gandhari, she was such a chaste lady that she has already achieved such high position, even higher than Dhritarashtra much before. But still, she is following him. When he goes to become a dhira, she is already a dhira. Actually, she is in a very high position. Text 31. Maharaj Yudhishthira, whose enemy was never born, performed his daily morning duties by praying, offering fire sacrifices to sun god, and offering obeisances, grains, cows, land, and gold to the Brahmanas. He then entered the palace to pay respects to the elderly. However, he could not find his uncles or aunt, the daughter of King Shubala. Now we see how perfect Yudhishthira Maharaj was, right? He followed the rules and regulations of Varnashma Dharma to the letter. He was such a perfect king. Getting up early, cleaning himself, doing all his morning puja, and then offering oblations, doing his yajna every day, Agnihotra, because Kshatriyas are supposed to do Agnihotra and Sandhya Vandana in the morning and evening. And then he did all the morning activities and offering fire sacrifice to Surya, which is the Agnihotra. Every day, a king, a Kshatriya, and a Brahmana should do Agnihotra. So we see that, he was perfect. He didn't say, oh, I'm a pure devotee, I don't have to do all these things, because he had to set an example to the whole society, to the devotees and non-devotees alike as a king. And then he offered obeisances and everyday charity. See, Grahastha means every day there has to be some charity done. Otherwise, we are living a sinful life. So we see as a king, he had the capability to give grains and cows and gold every day to Brahmanas. From our position, whatever is possible, a portion of what we earn on a daily basis, we should give separate for spiritual activity. So here we see how he set an example. And then after doing first his prayers and all his sadhana is over, then he gave dana, and then he went and paid obeisances to all the elderly people. And then that's when he noticed that Dhritarashtra and Gandhari are suddenly missing. Right? He searched everywhere, but he couldn't find them. And then Srila Prabhupada, talks about how the parents have to set an example. The parents have to follow this, the getting up early and doing things, so that the children will see the parents and follow. And if the parents don't do it, then as a family, as a whole, the whole family are walking towards hell. So this getting up early in the morning, taking bath, doing, one sadhana in the morning is very important. Text 32. Maharaj Yudhishthira, full of anxiety, turned to Sanjaya, who was sitting there, and said, "Oh Sanjaya, where is our uncle who is old and blind?" So Sanjaya was the personal servant, right? So Yudhishthira is asking Sanjaya. Sanjaya was the personal servant of Maharaj Dhritarashtra. Now, because he was blind and everything, we see that how even Mahabharat, the whole war was narrated by Sanjaya. So he was almost like a personal secretary for Dhritarashtra. So Yudhishthira is questioning Sanjaya. Text 33. Where is my well-wisher, Uncle Vidura and Mother Gandhari, who is very afflicted due to all her sons' demise? My uncle Dhritarashtra are also very mortified due to the death of all his sons and grandsons. Undoubtedly, I am very grateful. Did he therefore take my offenses very seriously and along with his wife drown himself in the Ganga? See the mood of a devotee. Srila Prabhupada's purport is very, 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 very important. So, we know that there is no fault on the side of the Pandavas, particularly Yudhishthira. He was perfect. He always forgave. He never considered their mistake and everything. But still, you see here how he is thinking, right? He is saying, like Dhritarashtra did everything bad to him, and Yudhishthira always did good for him, right? But how he is perceiving himself as that's a mood of a devotee. That is, Dhritarashtra always tried to do good for me, right? But I have done so many bad things against him. Whatever happened, Srila Prabhupada writes in the purport, were unavoidable, right? The war, the killing of the Kauravas, it was unavoidable because, in previous verses, we saw how Yudhishthira was called Ajata Shatru, right? In his mind, he had no enemy. In his own mind, everybody was good. He never perceived anybody as bad because he never saw anything bad in others, right? So that's why he is called Ajata Shatru, right? So he never thought Duryodhana was bad. He never wanted to kill Duryodhana. He never wanted to do anything bad. But Duryodhana kept on forcing his hand, and finally the war happened. Even after all the bad things Duryodhana had done and Dhritarashtra had done, still at the end, Yudhishthira thought that he was responsible for the war. He was the reason why so many people were killed. We see that how he felt, and Bhishma, gave him instruction that everything was the plan of Supreme Personality of Godhead. We saw that in the previous chapter. And here, he is taking complete responsibility, saying all the bad things happened because of me. This is the mood of a devotee, right? Srila Prabhupada, writes in the purport very wonderfully. Srila Prabhupada, pointing to Maharaj Yudhishthira's astonishing goodness, he says, this particular paragraph which Srila Prabhupada has written, I want to read it out because it's very important for us to understand. It has a lot of Sambandha Jnana and Abhideya practice. How do we apply this in our life? As a pious man, Maharaj Yudhishthira took into account all his unavoidable misdeeds, and he never thought of the misdeeds of his uncle and company. Dhritarashtra had suffered the effects of his own misdeed by the will of the Lord, but Maharaj Yudhishthira was thinking only of his own unavoidable misdeeds. That is the nature of a good man and a devotee of the Lord. A devotee never finds faults with others, but tries to find his own, and thus rectify them as far as possible. Very, very, very important instruction. The last line, I'm going to read it again. A devotee never finds faults with others, but tries to find his own and thus rectify them as far as possible. Any given situation, anybody could have created any problem, right? I'm not talking anywhere, like, whether it's a material or spiritual, particularly when we are in a spiritual environment, when we are in temple, when we associate with other devotees, this should be the mood. The devotees, there are no fault at others, there is only fault with me. And I need to keep on analyzing my faults so that I can, correct them as far as possible. It's not, this modern concept, oh, I am bad, and then becoming depressed. These are all unwanted negativity. We are not talking about that, but about being critical of ourselves, understanding our mistakes and becoming better, right? The positive side. Everything, fault finding also has a positive side. What is it? When we find fault in ourselves, that really reflects how we can correct ourselves. If we really know our fault, we'll correct ourselves. So this is very, very important. And we see that how, even though Dhritarashtra has done everything wrong, still Yudhishthira had so much, he was always thinking that he was the aggressor and he has done everything bad to Dhritarashtra. Srila Prabhupada gives, Yudhishthira thinks Dhritarashtra went and killed himself because he couldn't take all the bad things Yudhishthira had done. Text 34. When my father Pandu fell down and we were all small children, these two uncles gave us protection from all kind of calamities. They were always our good well-wishers. Alas, where have they gone from here? So he's still seeing, he's talking both about Vidura and Dhritarashtra, how they always protected us when our father was not there. So, Yudhishthira is saying that they were our protectors, but now that they are old, we are not able to protect them. Text 35. Suta Goswami said, because of compassion and mental agitation, Sanjaya, not having seen his own master, Dhritarashtra was aggrieved and could not properly reply to Maharaj Yudhishthira. So Sanjaya was aggrieved because he had lost his mind. Throughout his life, so Sanjaya had always served Dhritarashtra. Day one to day, from the time he joined his service, it's not like today modern world, right? One day you work, loyalty was all, very much. When somebody becomes a servant, they will serve their master to the end. It's a Vedic culture. These are all Vedic culture. We see that all of this was lost, right? I remember even in a previous generation, if you see the previous generation, they would have started work in some company and throughout their life they work for their company and they would have retired. But nowadays it's not like that. The companies are not loyal to their employees. The employees are not also loyal to the company. I work for this company one day, then I leave and go. Whoever gives me more money, I'll go. The same companies, they don't maintain, the master that doesn't maintain the servants don't take care of the, work for the masters. But we see that's not Varnashrama way of life. That, if you see the story of, Harishchandra or even, Yudhishthira Maharaj, Nala, you will see all of them, even when they lost everything, still their servants will serve them. And even at that stage, the master some or other will maintain their servants, right? It was a perfect arrangement. But nowadays, as I was saying, how for women chastity is tapasya, for a Shudra service is his tapasya. He did perfect service, whether it was a Brahmana master or a Kshatriya master, they did perfect. So Sanjaya, he was perfect. That's why he got the mercy of Vyasadeva to see the whole Mahabharata and explain, and he could even see the the Lord, how he acted, and then even the universal form, which the mercy that Krishna gave to Arjuna, even that he was able to see because he had his own tapasya. So when his master left, it was a great shock to him because throughout his life he has done that perfectly, and now there is no master, he is lost. What is he supposed to do? He is so super confused. And he was totally aggrieved, right? And so he didn't know what to do. Text 36. First, he slowly pacified his mind by intelligence and wiping away his tears and thinking of the feet of his master Dhritarashtra, he began to reply to Maharaj Yudhishthira. But even after all these things, he was able to compose himself. That is the difference, right? Because the service has, led him to understand the real knowledge. Right, the service doesn't institutionalize it. Right, we in modern we have this idea of institutionalization. So we see that even though he served Dhritarashtra throughout his life, from from the time he was aware, he has served Dhritarashtra. So still, when his master left, he was agitated. Because there was a big loss, but still he was able to such a 50, 60, 70. We don't know how many hundreds of years they. So more than 100 years he served Dhritarashtra, the old king. But still, when he left, he felt agitated for a few moments. But still, he was able to maintain the equilibrium because of all the knowledge that he has got, and because of his service. Not just knowledge, he also had the maturity to apply because of all the service he had done. It's all giving the fruit. So Sanjaya said, "My dear descendant of the Guru dynasty, I have no information of the determination of your two uncles, and Gandhari. O king, I have been cheated by those great souls." So again, very interesting purport. Srila Prabhupada talks about, it's astonishing to say the great soul like Vidura can cheat. But it's a fact that great souls cheat others for a greater cause. He gives the example of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, how Krishna made Yudhishthira tell a lie, right? For a higher purpose. And similarly, and we see how Sanatana Prabhupada gives the example of Sanatana, he bribed the jailer, to get away. And he also gives the example of Raghunatha Goswami. He's, how he cheated his priest, right? the priest, what happened was, the priest, their family, the family priest, or a spiritual master, the family guru, he had engaged a brahmana to do worship in his house, and that brahmana said, I can't do worship in your house anymore, I am very busy, and then he left. So the guru was like, who will do worship at my house? Because they used to have very elaborate worship. It's like our temple worship, like 6 times arati. Nobody can do it on their own. In addition to being the family guru, he can't do. So he came to talk to the zamindar so that he'll teach to the brahmana, and make sure that the brahmana comes for back to his service. At the time, his father and uncle were there. So Raghunath Das Goswami said, "Don't worry, I will talk to the brahmana, and I will make him come." And then his family priest went and they talked to the brahmana, and then they made him, Raghunatha Goswami, through his words, made the brahmana accept the service back again. And then from there, he said to his, family guru, "Oh, you don't have to accompany me to house. I can go on my own." And the guru thought, okay, anyway, Raghunath Das Goswami will go on his own. But then from there, he ran away, because his father and mother, uncle were stopping him from running away to Mahaprabhu. So sometimes they do it because Raghunath Das Goswami had a higher cause, higher goal. Like we see how Mahaprabhu, he never told anybody about his sannyas. He never told anyone that he's going to take sannyas. Suddenly, like that, he took sannyas and went away. So all the devotees felt cheated. How can Mahaprabhu take sannyas and go away? But then it was for a higher cause. He had to engage everybody else in the service. So similarly, Raghunath Das Goswami had a higher cause. So here we again see that Vidura had a higher cause. So, Sanjaya can think, oh, I am so close. I'm always with my, master. How can you do that? How can Vidura do this? But then sometimes it's necessary for a higher cause. So Prabhupada writes the last line, such a cheating was necessary for a great cause, and there is no loss for any party in such a transcendental fraud. So Srila Prabhupada's such a wonderful, purport. He also says how he left home because he had to, engage in the service of Srimad Bhagavatam. Such a wonderful purport Srila Prabhupada is writing. First canto, even before he came to US, he wrote this canto. And here we can see how Srila Prabhupada, he left home, everything, because he wanted to serve Srimad Bhagavatam for a higher cause. Text 38. While Sanjaya was thus speaking, Sri Narada, the powerful devotee. So until text 37, we see that how Dhritarashtra was advised by Vidura, and he left home and he went to the north to Himalayas, and then Yudhishthira searching for him. Now from this verse, we see Narada Muni appearing, because he know that Yudhishthira is a little agitated, that he felt bad. So Narada Muni is coming there to give him assurance and preach to him. So even a pure devotee needs association of a higher devotee. So we see that, Narada Muni. So the next few verses, the next 12 verses is about, Narada Muni's arrival and his philosophical discussions with Yudhishthira Maharaj, his advice on a philosophical background. Then he will also give an information on what happened to Dhritarashtra, the last 10 verses. And with that, we'll finish this chapter. So we'll see how many verses we can do. We have another 10-15 minutes to go. While Sanjaya was thus, text 38, while Sanjaya was thus speaking, Sri Narada, the powerful devotee of the Lord, appeared on the scene carrying his tamburu. Maharaj Yudhishthira and his brothers received him properly by getting up from their seats and offering obeisances. So Narada Muni comes, and Yudhishthira is giving him the same respect. Here Prabhupada says Narada Muni is called Bhagavan because his confidential devotees are non-different from Krishna, in the sense they are representatives of Krishna. So when we see such a pure devotee, we should worship him like we worship Krishna himself. Prabhupada many times gives the example of a government employee who comes to the house. He represents the whole government. Similarly, Narada, since he represents Krishna, Prabhupada says such personalities, Narada, must be offered all due respects, like those offered to the personality of God himself. Yudhishthira again setting an example of how to worship and receive Narada Muni. He was not like, oh, my uncle auntie is gone, Vidura is lost, and he was like, I'm in a sad position, and no, whatever is the position, that's why he is called Yudhishthira. Yudhishthira means one who had a very steady mind. Whatever is the situation, he is very steady. He knows what is the right thing to do. Text 39. Maharaj Yudhishthira said, O godly personality, I do not know where my two uncles have gone, nor can I find my ascetic aunt who is grief stricken by the loss of all her sons. So, now he is questioning, now that Narada Muni has come, first he has offered obeisances and everything, and then he is opening up his heart. So we know what are the 6 kinds of association, we understand, right? First, giving prashadam, accepting prashadam, giving gift, accepting gift, and then opening up the heart, and then receiving instruction. These things. So after taking care of him, washing his feet and giving him place to rest and giving him charity and giving him prashadam and everything, then Yudhishthira Maharaja is opening up his heart. Personal example of how we should behave. He is talking what is giving, what is troubling him. You are like a captain of a ship in a great ocean, and you can direct us to our destination. Thus addressed the godly personality Devarishi Narada, greatest of the philosopher devotees, began to speak. So, so again, he is comparing here him to the captain of a ship. We know how Prabhupada in the Science of Self-Realization, he gives this example of a boat, this body being the boat, and soul being the passenger, and the captain of the boat is our spiritual master, right? So here we see that same analogy is given, that Narada Muni is compared to a captain. So stuck in a great ocean of this material world. So he is requesting to give him guidance on this particular matter. And then when he requested Narada Muni, here he is called Muni Sattamaha, the greatest among the devotee philosophers. So Srila Prabhupada talks about there are different types of philosophers, and the greatest is a devotee. See, devotee doesn't mean we are sentimental. Devotee means we have a very strong knowledge of philosophy. We know the logic, we understand, and we apply it properly. It's not that we do things on a sentimental platform or whatever comes to the mind. So even among philosophers, the greatest is a devotees, and topmost of among all such devotees, the chief is Narada Muni. Srila Prabhupada says, and Srila Prabhupada also gives the example of Uttam Adhikari, because Uttam Adhikari means one who is not only very well, because there are many definitions. One of the definitions of Uttam Adhikari is he is well versed in the Shastra. Not only he is well versed in the Shastra, but he is also capable of explaining and make other people accept and follow Shastra. So Narada Muni is such a person. We see that he had a very elevated disciples like great Brahmanas, and to Kshatriyas like Dhruva and Prahlad, and even Mrigari hunter who was a Malecha. Everybody he was able to turn through his knowledge and philosophy. Text 41. Narada says, Sri Narada. So from here on, from text 41 to 50, we hear philosophy. Narada Muni. Now that's why he was first given this background of Sattamaha, right? Narada Muni, among of all the devotees, he is a philosopher. So there are 3 things that we always know: Sambandha, Avideya, and Prayojana, right? So we all know Prayojana, but the Sambandha Jnana is also there. But on a time-to-time basis, we need somebody to explain the Sambandha Jnana to us and remind us. And why? Because we all have knowledge, right? We know we are not the body, we are the soul. But we don't know when to apply, where to apply, how to apply. So when the situation comes, the application part, we need a living spiritual master, or a living Siksha Guru, or a living senior who can guide us on a day-to-day basis. It's very important, right? That's what we see Yudhishthira, right? He had a perfect understanding, but still certain times there are certain higher philosophies to be understood, and there are certain philosophies to be applied. There are certain things to be neglected. Because I was talking about, I've been asked this question many times. People ask, "Oh, Prabhu, you say that we should never find fault in others. We should always find fault in ourselves. But I go to office. How do I behave? Can I behave like this there?" Right? We get questions like this, right? So how do we understand where to apply, when to apply, what to apply in our day-to-day life? This is very important to understand, right? And the other thing is that is, sometimes people have two tracks. Oh, material life is separate, spiritual life is separate. Whatever instruction I get, I will apply for only spiritual life and not for material life. That also is wrong, right? You can't, you do completely spiritual. That means, you should not work in a, you should be like Jada Bharata. If you're like Jada Bharata, we know what will happen. We'll get thrown. But at the same time, we can't be materialistic also. Like, we can't go and behave like a karmi. Oh, it's okay. In the office, I'll do whatever nonsense I do, and then I'll come and chant. That also will not work. So we need to understand in what circumstances, where, what to apply. And for that, we always need a day-to-day guidance from a spiritual master, or from a senior devotee, or from a Siksha Guru. This is very important. That's why we see here at this point, right, what Yudhishthira should apply. Because when Arjuna said, just before the war, Arjuna may had a very similar detachment scenario. Why to kill all those beings? I don't want, I'll go and live in the forest on my own. And then Krishna chastised him saying, no, this is not the place to apply your detachment. Right? Whereas we see here at this point, we see that Narada Muni is talking about detachment in the next 10 verses. He's saying that, control of time, everything happens. So, whatever happens should happen. We should not be bothered by it. So, the point that we need to understand is that as devotees, this is application, the abhideya of the Sambandha Jnana has to be done under guidance. We need to explain our situation, open our heart, and then the spiritual master will say, and given that circumstances, given that background, what knowledge you should apply, how you should apply. This is very critical. Otherwise, if the abhideya doesn't work out, then we can never go to prayojana. We will be stuck, right? Because the wrong application or no application will make us stagnant in devotional service, or may lead even to offenses or anarthas. So we need to be very careful. And we see here that, when the situation needs, if we are sincere, if we really want to advance in devotional science, if we are very clear about our goal, the Lord will send the spiritual master to guide us, each one of us in in the situation, how we should behave. The Lord will reveal to us through the spiritual master. We don't, oh, my spiritual master lives there, I am here, he is thousands of miles away, or my spiritual master is not in this planet. Doesn't matter. Krishna, if we are sincere, Krishna will definitely reveal the knowledge. We see how Narada Muni appeared. The same case, Dhruva. He was very determined, I want to see Krishna. His purpose may be wrong. Because he was determined, immediately Narada Muni came there. So as long as our purpose is clear, any situation, how to apply the spiritual knowledge that we have gained, Krishna will reveal through the spiritual master. And we should be ready to accept all the time. We should be begging for this instruction. We should be praying to the Lord, please guide me through a spiritual master, please guide me through your pure devotees, so that on a day-to-day basis, on or any given situation, I will know how to apply this knowledge and process it, and advance in spiritual life. We should be very clear on this. It's very important. So before we jump on to the, because the instructions of Narada Muni, I think we can do it next week, because we just have a couple of minutes left in today's class. So we have finished until text 40. Hopefully we can finish this chapter by next week. So we have taken little more than usual. We generally take 2 to 3 weeks. This chapter, this is the third week, and next week will be the fourth week. So we are taking 4 weeks because it's a big chapter. Hopefully we can finish it next week and then jump to the 14th chapter on the week after that. So as usual, if you have any questions, you can write to me and I will explain it before or after the class. And then from there, we can continue. Thank you all for joining. Grindara Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srila Gurudev ki jai, Gaura Premanande Hari Hari Bo.
But basically, that's the idea. Now, this is Sankalpa Mantra. I was touching on this, I think, in the first